All right, so a quick review of intercepts. If I have a graph, let's use, this is my line. The x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. And so to find an x-intercept, we're trying to find the x value when y equals 0. For the y-intercept, which is where it crosses the y-axis, that's the y value when x equals 0. So as an ordered pair, our x-intercept is an x value when y is 0. And then for our y-intercept, it's a y value. And so be very careful when doing a multiple choice test. You can eliminate options just based on where the 0 is. If x is 0, that's your y-intercept. Okay, and so if you're trying to find a y-intercept or an x-intercept in the table, just look for your zeros. So here's my x-intercept. Nope, that's my y-intercept. My x-intercept is an x value when y is 0. My y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. So y-intercept. Over here, my x-intercept is 7, 0. My y-intercept is 0, 3, 60. X-intercept is 2, 0. Y-intercept 0, 40. Okay, on table 4, I don't see any zeros, but if that ever happens, you can analyze the pattern and continue your table. X's are going by 1s, and it looks like the Y's are decreasing by 5. So if I keep going, I would get 0 right here because 5 minus 5 is 0. But then that would mean x increases by 1, giving us 6. Same with the other direction. That would mean up here we would have 30 because 30 minus 5 would give me this 25. And then I would have 0 for the x. And so here's my x-intercept. And my y-intercept. I love that trick of continuing the table by using the pattern. And so that's how you find intercepts from a table. Next, we're going to talk about how to find. All right, so far we know how to find intercepts from a graph, a table, and we've done some work with equations. And so the next examples 5 through 10, we're going to talk about how to find intercepts from an equation. But before we do that, I want to talk about the different kinds of linear equations. So far, we've been working with slope-intercept form. And we like slope-intercept form. That's probably our favorite. Because if we have y equals mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form, we have a lot of information. We have the slope, which is the m value. And then we also have the y-intercept, which is the b value, whatever b is. Another type of linear equation is standard form. Okay, and in standard form, the x term plus the y term equals some number. And so number 5, 6, 7, and 8, all of these are in standard form, whereas 9 and 10 are slope-intercept form. Okay, and so with standard form, you have to be very careful because we do have these numbers A, B, and C. So in this case, it's 2, 5, 40. We have a 30, a negative 80, a 7,200. And so unlike slope-intercept form, these numbers actually give us no information. Okay, so don't fall for that trick. And so these are literally nothing valuable. They're just part of our equation. Whereas here we have our slope and our y-intercept. We don't have anything from standard form. So standard form is not our favorite, but we can still find our intercepts by plugging in 0 for x and plugging in 0 for y. And so I'm going to show you how to do. All right, so now we're going to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept from each equation. So x-intercept, I'm going to use this color. Y-intercept, I'm going to use blue. Okay, and so for the x-intercept, remember it's an x value when y is 0. And so we can take our equation 2x plus 5y equals 40 and replace the y with 0. 5 times 0 is just 0. Leaving us with just 2x equals 40. And then we can divide by 2, giving us x equals 20. And so our x-intercept is 20, 0. For the y-intercept, remember we're looking for a y value when x is 0. So on a multiple choice test, cross off anything that doesn't have x as 0 for the y-intercept. So we can take our equation 2x plus 5y equals 40 and substitute 0 for the x this time. So 2 times 0 is just 0. And we don't have to write that 0. We do on the 40. Divide by 5. And so y equals 8. And so our y-intercept is 8. Okay, so notice our x-intercept is 20 and our y-intercept is 8. None of those numbers showed up in this original equation. We had a 2, a 5, and a 40. Those have nothing to do with our intercept, so be very, very careful. So many people want to say the x-intercept is 2, the y-intercept is 5. Those are just what is called the coefficients, the numbers next to them. Those are not the intercepts. Our intercepts are 20 and 8, which you could not see from the equation. Okay, and so I want you to try this method on the next few examples, and then you can come back to. All right, so now we are going to continue finding these intercepts from our equations. So for the x-intercept, we are looking for an x value, and so we plug in 0 for y. Which makes the entire y term turn into 0 because 80 times 0 is 0. leaving us with 30x equals 7,200. Divide both sides by 30. Let me use my calculator, which is 240. And some of you already knew that. And so 240 is our x-intercept. For our y-intercept, we replace the x with 0 and solve for the y. And so 30x minus 80y equals 7,200. This turns into 0. Which just equals negative 80y on the left. Don't lose your negative sign. We are dividing by a negative 80 because that's what is in front of the y. And 7,200 divided by negative 80 is negative 90. I guarantee you positive 90 will be a choice because they know you're going to lose your negative. Don't fall for their tricks. And so 0, negative 90 would be our y-intercept. Okay, on number 7, for the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y, giving us x minus 7 times 0 equals 210, which is just x minus 0, which is just x. And so our x-intercept is 210. For the y-intercept, we are replacing the x with 0 and solving for y. So 0 minus 7y equals 210, leaving me with just negative 7y equals 210. Don't lose your negative. Which gives me y equals negative 30. Again, I want to point out that you don't see that negative 30 in this equation at all. So don't tell me your y-intercept is negative 7 or 210 or anything like that. Okay, number 8. These numbers aren't going to be pretty, but we can still do it. For the x-intercept, plug in 0 for y. Giving us 5x plus 0 equals 35. So 5x equals 35, giving us x equals 7. That one was pretty. For the y-intercept, plug in 0 for x and solve for the y. Five times 0 is 0. So we have 4y equals 35. Divide both sides by 4. That's 8.75. And so our y-intercept is 8.75. All right, so 9 and 10 are not in standard form, but the same method applies. All right, so number 9 and number 10 are in slope-intercept form, so we actually already have the y-intercept. If you were to plug in 0 for x, this x term would go away. And so in the case of number 9, we'd be left with the y-intercept of 0, 4. In the case of number 10, we would be left with a y-intercept of 0, -9. Don't lose your negative. And so the x-intercept is a lot harder from these. And so we've actually already done these, but I want to review just in case. And so for the x-intercept, same rule always applies. No matter what kind of function you have, always plug in 0 for the y if you're trying to find the x-intercept. In Algebra 2, we do these with absolute value, exponential, logarithmic, all kinds of crazy functions. It's always the same thing. You plug in 0 for the x, for the y when you're trying to find the x-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to take my equation, and where there's a y, I'm going to plug in 0. Leave x alone, because that's what we're solving for. Okay, so first we need to isolate the x term by subtracting 4. It's a little bit harder, because we have to isolate that term first. And so now we have -4 on the left, and -2/3 x on the right. Now, because I have a divided by 3, I am going to multiply both sides by 3 so I can get rid of that. And so I have -12 equals -2x. That -2 on top didn't go away. Now we can divide by -2, and then -12 divided by -2 is +6. So 6, 0. And if you were to plug in 6 right there for x, you would get 0 for y. And so these are a little bit harder, and you got to be careful because you can't see that 6 in the equation. You can only see the slope and the y-intercept because this is slope-intercept form. Okay, number 10, we plug in 0 for y, and we get 0 equals 5/2 x minus 9. So I'm going to go ahead and add 9 to both sides. And then multiply both sides by that divided by 2, giving me 18 equals 5x. Divide both sides by 5. And so x equals, I'm going to use my calculator, 3.6. You could also leave it as a fraction, 18/5. All right, the last thing we need to talk about for these notes is how to write an equation in standard form, and then how to determine what the intercepts mean after we find them. And so number 11 says the Marshall High School Athletic Association sells tickets for the weekly football games. The football team is playing in an out-of-town tournament. The athletic association needs to raise $3,000 to send the team to this tournament. The money raised from selling tickets to a special event home game will be used toward the tournament costs. Students pay $5, adults pay $10. And so just highlighting some important information, students pay $5, adults pay $10, and they need to raise $3,000. So if X is the number of students, Y is the number of adults, write an equation to determine how many of each tickets need to be sold. And so anytime you're dealing with two kinds of rates, for this example, it's $5 per student and then $10 per adult, and then you have a total, that's how you know this isn't a y equals mx plus b situation. This is a standard form situation. And so the equation for this would be not 10. If x is the number of students, $5 times the number of students plus $10 times the number of adults needs to equal our total of $3,000. So anytime you're given a total and then two rates, and those are your variables, that's how you know you're dealing with standard form. Okay, and so in number 12, it says, Katie received a $75 gift card for her birthday. And so that $75 is a total. She decides to buy new music and movies with her electronic notebook. For her electronic notebook with the gift card. Songs cost $150 each. Movies cost $15 each. So we have a total and two rates. X is the number of songs. Y is the number of movies. Write an equation to represent how much of each she can buy. And so this is another standard form equation because X is the number of songs and they're $150 each. So 150 times the number of songs plus 15 times the number of movies can equal our total of $75 on the gift card. I'm going to do better. All right, so that's how you write an equation in standard form. There's slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. That's when you have a starting point, the y-intercept, and then one slope. Here we basically have two slopes, two rates, and they equal a total when you add them together. And so be able to just All right, so now that we know how to write a standard form equation, we're going to talk about how to find the intercepts and determine what they mean. Okay, so for the x-intercept, remember we take our equation and plug in 0 for the y. That leaves us with 5x plus 0 equals 3,000. And so 5x equals 3,000. And so x equals 600. I'm going to double check that. I don't trust my math. 600. Okay, and so the x-intercept would be 600, 0. And when it talks about what this means, that's when we want to put the units on it, just like slope. And so remember, x is the number of students. Y is the number of adults. And so if we put the units on it, 600 is the students, 0 is the adults. Since the point is 600, 0, that's the number of students. That's the number of adults. And so we can't just say the number of students. It's a very specific number of students. A lot of people get confused on what does the x-intercept mean versus what does the x variable mean. The x variable is just the number of students, whereas the x-intercept is 600 students when there are 0 adults. And so the meaning is, let's see, we're dealing with money raised from selling tickets. And so if 600 student tickets are sold, they don't need to sell any adult tickets. Another way to say that is if they don't sell any adult tickets, they need to sell 600 student tickets. Okay, so same idea for the y-intercept, only this time we plug in 0 for the x. And so our equation is 5x plus 10y equals 3,000. But we are plugging in 0 for the x, leaving us with 0 plus 10y equals 3,000. So 10y equals 3,000. Divide by 10, leaving us with y equals 300. And so again, what does this specific point mean? The y variable is the number of adults. And so if we look at this, that means 0 students for the x, 300 adults for the y. And so the meaning of this, just like we said, if 600 student tickets are sold, they don't need to sell any adult tickets. We would say if no students or no student tickets are sold, they need to sell 300 adult tickets. All right, on this situation down here, we were dealing with X is the number of songs, Y is the number of movies, and she has $75 on her gift card. And so each song is $1.50, each movie is $15. And so to find the x-intercept, we take our equation, 1.50x plus 15y equals 75, but we plug in 0 for the y variable, leaving us with 1.50x or 1.5 plus 0 equals 75. So 1.50x equals 75. Divide by that 1.50 or 1.5. And we get x equals 50. And so the x-intercept would be 50, 0. And so to interpret this situation, 50, 0, remember x is the number of songs and 0 is the number of movies. So if she buys 50 songs, she can't buy any movies. Or you could say if she doesn't buy any movies, she gets to buy 50 songs. Either could be options on a test. Both wouldn't be options because both would be correct. Okay, for the y-intercept, same idea. We take our equation, and this time we replace the x with 0. So 0 plus 15y equals 75. 15y equals 75. And so 1y equals 5. I had a feeling that was it. And so 0, 5. And so that's our y-intercept. Remember, this is the songs. This is the movies. And so if she buys 5 movies, she can buy 0 songs. Or if you want to make it a little more positive, if she doesn't buy any songs, she can buy 5 movies. As long as songs is 0 and movies is 5, you've got the right answer. And so 0, 5, and then if we interpret that, that's this sentence here. 50, 0, and if we interpret it, that's this sentence. So anytime you're trying to determine the meaning, whether it's slope or